everyone today? I am so happy to see all of you here for our first session of our first annual Owl Festival here in Pueblo. Thank you guys for coming. My name is Diana, and I am the Raptor Center Director at the Nature and Raptor Center. And we're so excited to partner with the Library District and the Pueblo Zoo and the Mountain Park Environmental Center to celebrate one of our favorite group of animals, the owls. So how many of you guys like owls? Oh, well, I hope so, because that's why you're here. I love owls. I have always been fascinated by them. When I was a kid, I had my first experience with an owl when I was probably about 14. I grew up in the country of northern Illinois, and there are lots of cool old forests, and there's lots of farms, and lots of old abandoned farm buildings. And not too far from my house, there's an old abandoned farmhouse that is haunted. Have any of you guys ever visited a haunted house? Yeah, it's pretty creepy. And as kids, we would ride our bikes down the gravel road and go by the old haunted farmhouse. And we'd all be like, I dare you to go in there. Oh, I'm not going in there, it's haunted, right? Have you ever done that? Dared your friend to do something? Well, one day we were riding by and it started to storm. There was a storm coming and it's gonna rain, and we were like, oh, we're not gonna make it home in time. So we thought, well, we'll be brave and we'll go up to the old haunted house and we'll just stand on the porch and stay out of the rain. Well, of course, once we were all sitting there, the daring started. You know, I dare you to go in through the window. No, no, I dare you. I double dare you. And so on and so forth. And eventually we all dared each other to go into the house. So we crawled through this broken window and we went into the house and we were looking around the old farmhouse, and actually we're like, oh, what is everybody talking about? There's nothing wrong here. And there's this old rotting staircase, and being foolish kids, we thought, oh, let's climb up the old stairs. It won't fall. And we got about 3 steps up the staircase when all of a sudden came this blood-curdling scream. Ah! And this white thing came streaking down the stairs at us. And you could imagine what we all did. We ran through the window. There was a hole, no kidding. We just crawled out the window and we got on our bikes and we rode home as fast as we could because we were all terrified because it was haunted. Well, I have to tell you, I'm a very curious person. So a couple days later, I got up my bravery and I rode my bike again out to the old farmhouse. And I was bound and determined to see that ghost again. So as I started exploring again the house and I started creeping up the staircase, once again, this scream comes at me and this thing comes ripping down the staircase right over my head. And this time I didn't run. This time I held my ground. It's smaller than I am. I can take it. And this thing flew over my head and screamed at me a few times. And then as I looked around, I realized the ghost was actually an owl. There was a family of barn owls that lived in this old house. And the males are white. I don't have a barn owl to show you today, but they're so beautiful. And you're here at the library, so I bet you can go find a picture of one. They're this white, and the male, underneath, he's just totally white. And when he comes streaking down at you in the dark and he's screaming, it's a very scary thing. And ever since that moment, when I realized that's an owl, I became totally fascinated with these wonderful creatures. And my life has kind of taken me into caring not just for owls, but all kinds of birds of prey. Owls belong to a group of birds. We call them birds of prey, or raptors. Have you guys ever heard that term? And that's why I work at a raptor center, because birds of prey are raptors. And they are things like owls. And did we know another kind of bird of prey? What's another one? Eagles are another group of birds of prey. Vultures. We saw, they're back, by the way, from migration. They're starting to show their little naked heads around here, but they're back. What else? Hawks. Yep. Any others? The big eagles?
Yeah, they're called bald eagles.
Bald eagles, very good. So what we got hawks, we got eagles, we got owls, we got vultures. There's a big group missing. Falcons, very good. And there's lots of others too. There's osprey, which they're back from migration in the area, and there's birds, a lovely bird of prey called a kite that lives in our region. But there's just a whole bunch of birds of prey. And part of our job at the Nature Center, of course, our main job is nature and connecting everybody to it. And we do that through education and recreation and all those great things out at the Nature Center. And my job is conservation, and that's what I do. I help birds of prey, and we help owls and hawks and eagles and falcons in a couple of ways. One way that we help them is by teaching people about them, because I have found over my years that the more I know about my neighbor, the easier it is to get along with them. Does everybody have neighbors? Yeah. Do you have a neighbor that you don't really know very well, and sometimes you think that neighbor's crazy? Yeah. But if you talk to them, maybe they're still crazy, but you learn a little bit about them, and suddenly it's a little easier to get along because you know their name and you know a little bit about them. Well, that just doesn't apply to humans, because we have more than human neighbors, don't we? We have plant neighbors and we have animal neighbors. And when I first moved to Colorado, especially here in Pueblo, and I started walking in the prairie, I found out that the plant neighbors, if you're not careful, they bite you back. You've ever been walking in the prairie and had a plant bite you? Yeah, that cactus just jumped out and got your leg. Yeah, exactly. And we have lots of animal neighbors. Of course, there's birds and mammals and frogs, all kinds of critters. And we want to learn about them, because part of the reason we learn about them is the second reason that we have to help them. They get in trouble. And sometimes their troubles are very similar to our troubles, and sometimes they're very different. Like, I've never gotten a call at 2 o'clock in the morning from the Pueblo County Sheriff going, "Hey, Diana, we just picked up a great horned owl. He was trying to rob Loaf a Jug." Okay? No, they don't rob convenience stores, do they? But I have gotten a call at my house at 2 o'clock in the morning from the Pueblo County Sheriff saying, "Hey, Diana, an officer out on patrol just saw a great horned owl get hit by a car." And that officer stopped because he felt bad for the animal, and he managed to pick him up off the side of the road and get him in a box. He has a broken wing. They have accidents, and sometimes those accidents are because of us. They get hit by cars, they fly into windows, they get tangled in barbed wire fences, they get sometimes shocked on our power lines. We put a lot of things out there that cause them harm, that get them into trouble. Or sometimes they just get ill. They're just like us, they're living creatures. They get the flu, they get sinus infections. Heck, they even have allergies. Yeah, are you guys all starting to sneeze? Yeah, allergy season is upon us. The plants are kicking back in for spring. They get allergies. We got this one little red-tailed hawk in. Oh, it was so sad. This gentleman called. He said, "Hello, I live in Pueblo, and the strangest thing has happened in my backyard. Do hawks crawl into wood piles and sleep?" And I'm like, "Not usually." We'll come over and take a look. And we went to this man's backyard, and we pulled this little hawk. He crawled into a hole in the wood pile, and we pulled him out, and his little face was all swollen. And he just looked sad, and he just like, "I feel bad, I feel real bad." And we carefully put him in a box, and we took him back to the center, and we treated him, and we weren't quite sure at first what was happening with his little swollen face. And we went, of course, to our veterinarian, because to help care for these guys when they're hurt or sick, we need the help of a medical professional. So we have 2 veterinarians that help us. And the vets kind of looked at it for a bit, and they scratched their heads, and we took some x-rays, and we did some blood tests. And you know what? That little guy had a sinus infection. He was just all infected. And we gave him some antibiotics and some very good care. And about 3 weeks later, his face was normal. And we went to look at him one day, and he just looked back going, "Reach in, see what happens." And I'm like, "You're feeling better. Excellent." So our goal when they come in, just like that little red tail, is whether they're hurt or they're ill, or sometimes they're just kids who have gotten maybe separated from their parents, or something's happened. We don't know where mom and dad is, or sadly, sometimes they get kidnapped too. People just see them there and alone and think, "Oh, this little guy's alone. His parents left him." That's not true, because sometimes when you're a kid, do you want to be alone without your parents in the backyard? Do you ever want to go play in the backyard without mom? Yeah, sure you do. You want some alone time. Baby animals, mom and dad leave them in a safe spot to go off and do their hunting. So not all baby animals you find alone need help. So we want to be careful about that. But when they need help, we try to do our very best to heal their injuries or their illnesses or help them grow up. And eventually our job is to return them to the wild. And that is the very best thing that ever can happen to them, is they get to go free again. And people, we have releases. Sometimes it's appropriate for the bird. We can release for the public, and that's an exciting thing. And people always ask me as the bird flies away, aren't you sad to see it go? And I'm like, are you kidding me? One, he's home where he belongs, and two, I don't have to clean his cage anymore. It's a good thing. And that happens, freedom, returning to freedom, happens to about half of the birds that come to our center. There are wildlife centers all over the world that care for animals. And here at our center in Pueblo, we care for about 200 birds of prey a year. And about half of them get to go home again. And that's exciting. The other half, I'm very sad to tell you, won't survive. Sometimes they're just so badly injured or they're just so ill, there's not much that we can do for them, and they pass, and that's a sad thing. But every now and then we end up with a bird like the ones you're going to meet today, the owls that I've brought along with me. These are very special birds. These birds came to the center for different reasons, and I'll certainly share those with you as we go along. And despite our best efforts to return them to the wild, the birds couldn't go because their bodies were left with some damage. Maybe they had broken a wing, and when the wing healed, it didn't heal the right shape. And of course, a bird whose wing isn't the right shape isn't going to be able to fly. So they can't fly anymore, so they can't pursue or chase their prey. Or maybe they've lost an eye and they don't see very well. So these birds have handicaps or disabilities, if you will. And they have very special personalities. Not every bird will do what these guys are about to do. Stand in a crowd of 60 people and let you stare at them. That's a very scary thing. How many of you would like to stand up here and have 60 people stare at you? Yeah, see, there's only like 2 hands that went up. Exactly. Exactly. It takes a very special human and it takes a very special animal to do this. So these very special birds that can't go back, well, they help us do our job. Some of them, like the guys I brought today, are teachers. They travel with us to all kinds of crazy places and help us teach people all about owls. And some of them, they really don't want to help teach, but they're willing to stay with us and be a companion for another owl or another bird prey that lives there. And some of them, which I'm very happy about, like to stay with us, and they help us because they like children, but not you guys. They don't like human children at all. You know what kind of kids they like? Their own kind. And that's a very special animal. They are birds we call foster parents. Have you ever heard that term before? Foster parents are awesome. They're grown-ups who may or may not have their own kids, but there are some kids, and for whatever reason, their parents can't do the job. The foster parent says, I'll take them in. I'll raise them just like they were my own. Humans do this all the time, don't we? But you know what? Animals do too. And we have a very special owl. Her name's Aggie, who lives with us at the center. And she's very excited because it's baby season. And you know how I know it's baby season? Because just this morning, we had the most cool thing happen. About 2 weeks ago, an owl nest got damaged and the eggs had to be removed. And they brought them to our center and we put them in an incubator. And guess what happened this morning? One of them hatched. Oh my gosh. It's like this little naked thing. It's actually white and fluffy, but it's like this big. It's so cute. And it's going to grow up to be something this big. And it's just adorable. And you won't be able to see it because, you know, it's in the nursery and it's going to go in with Aggie, and she says no visitors. Because, you know, how many families really want people peeking in their houses? Not many. But she's going to help us by raising that little guy. And he, hopefully, if all goes well, will go back to the wild this fall. So we'll cross our fingers. But that's what we do. So you guys ready to meet the owls? I've been kind of delaying because people keep trickling in, so I kind of wait till everybody was here. So, shall we get started? Now I do have two favors to ask while the birds are out, okay? While most of them have been with us a very long time and they're pretty used to being around a lot of people, they are still, deep down in their hearts, wild creatures, okay? So they are wild animals, and most wild animals are very sensible and know better than to hang out with humans. They're a little bit afraid of us. So to help the owls feel very comfortable, if everyone, and you're already doing exactly what I need to do, is to sit as still as you can and just be very quiet. That helps the owls to feel safe. You, of course, can wiggle a little bit, and you're very welcome to take their pictures. I only ask the favor, if you are with your camera, that you move slowly, so that you don't startle the bird. If for some reason they do get a little nervous or frightened, their instinct, of course, is to run away or to fly away. And the birds are going to be attached to me, so they really can't fly, but they might jump off my hand. And I know it looks horrible when they do it, but it doesn't hurt the bird, and I'm going to get him right back up on my hand as quickly as I can. That's called baiting. They don't do that very often, but sometimes in a scary place, you know, they want to, you know, run and hide, and I don't blame them sometimes. So I'm going to wander over here and get out our first owl, okay? So let me see, who should I start with? Well, since I just talked about great horned owls, maybe we should start with one. Come here, Guffers. Good morning. Hi, handsome. Oh, can you hear him? The front row, can you hear him hissing at me? He's saying, no, don't pick me. Come here, Guffy. Are you ready, buddy? There we go. Oh, 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 there it is. Oh, oh, okay, it's all right. Let me get you up. It's all right. Oh, now, is the light scary? Might be the light. Let me go over here a little bit. Yeah, oh, whoa, 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 whoa. Aw, sweetie, it's all right. Oh, it's all right. I don't think he's been to the library before. He's a little, you're okay, you're all right. You okay? It's all right, there we go. I think he got a little scared with that bright light over there. He'll settle down here in a second. Yeah, there we go. So this handsome fellow is a great horned owl. And great horned owls are amazing. They are probably one of the most magnificent animals on the planet. Being an owl, of course, for the most part, owls are active at night. But are all of them active at night? No, there are some owls that are out in the middle of the day. But most owls they're built for nighttime, but not all of them. But one of the things about owls is, of course, the first thing is all owls eat animals. So how many of you guys eat animals? Yep, pretty much everybody. Exactly. Animal eaters, whether you're an owl or a human or a mountain lion, if you're going to eat an animal, you have two choices. You can either find one already dead, which most of us do at the grocery store, right? Exactly. Or you can hunt it. If you're going to hunt a live animal, you got to have a set of tools. And trust me, owls have some amazing tools, or adaptations as we call them. So first of all, before you can ever think about eating an animal, the first thing you got to do is you have to find it. Now, great horned owls look for or listen for a whole lot of different animals. This is an owl that you can find pretty much anywhere in North and even South America. They will live in the prairie where we are. They'll live in a desert. They'll live in a swamp. They'll live in the mountains. They'll live in downtown Chicago. They live everywhere. They can take advantage of almost any habitat you can imagine, and they eat pretty much anything they can get their talons into. Great horned owls will eat something as tiny as a grasshopper, all the way up to something as big as a skunk or a jackrabbit. And they don't care if the animal has fur or fins or scales or exoskeletons or feathers. They don't care. If it's in that size range, they will go for it. They are a very smart, powerful predator. And to help them locate those animals, which one of their favorite animals are rodents like rats and mice, they have a cool set of tools. The first thing I always like to look at when I see an owl is I love to look at their faces. Don't they have amazing faces? When you look at an owl's face, you'll notice that if you look real kind of close at it, that around each of its eyes, there's sort of a circle pattern of feathers. Can you guys spot that on this owl? This owl, by the way, this is Guffy. Did I introduce him? Sometimes I get so excited I forget to tell you their names. But around each of Guffy's beautiful eyes, he has this circle pattern. And that pattern of feathers we call a facial disc. And it does an important job. Actually, it does a couple of important jobs for him. One, it actually helps to focus light into his eyes so that it helps him to see at night very well. But more importantly, this beautiful pattern helps him to capture sound and send it to his ear openings. Do you guys have anything on your head to catch sound? What do you got? Yeah, you're pointing to them. Yeah, you have these silly flaps on the side of your head. These are our ears. This is your tool or adaptation for capturing sound and sending it down into your head where all the parts of your ear are. Owls don't have a silly flap like we do. Instead, they use their feathers. And it's a very important tool for them. Owls are incredible listeners, and they can hear very, very faint sounds. Guffy can pick up the sound of a mouse eating in the forest, and that's a tiny little noise. Have you guys ever heard a mouse eat? Well, if you've never had the honor of hearing a mouse eating something in your wall, I'll make that sound for you today. Ready? Here we go. Here's the sound of a mouse eating. Can you hear that little click? That is the sound of rodent teeth gnashing down on a seed. You can mimic the sound too. All I'm doing is snapping the end of my fingernails together. Click, click, click. This is the part where Guffy goes, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. We got some good mouse sounds going on out there. His hearing is so amazing. The sound will travel, you know, sound waves travel from their source and they go out and they hit his face. And the feathers pick up those waves and they send it to his ears. Now, here's a really big question. Where are his ears?
Right there.
Point to them. Well, they are on his head. Good job. Where on his head are they? Show me on your head where you think his ears are. Point to where you think they are. Are they up here? On the side? If you said on the side, good for you. His ears are on the side of his head. They're actually pretty much where ours are. They're on the side of the head behind the eyes. Except his are a little bit different. Actually, not that different. When you guys go home tonight, I want you to do a little experiment, okay? I want you to look in the mirror. Pull your hair back and look in the mirror real close. And then I want you to take your fingers and I want you to poke on the mirror exactly on the top of each of your ears in the mirror. And then step back a little bit. And I want you to notice something. Your ears are uneven. If you wear glasses, you've probably noticed that when you put your glasses on the table, the side pieces aren't the same. They're uneven because your ears are uneven. And so are owls, except sometimes a lot more uneven than ours. And you know what? It's that unevenness or asymmetry of his ears that actually helps him to listen. He'll take that tiny little soft sound of the mouse. It'll enter into his ears. Now, one of his ears on the side is a little bit low, and in some owls it even might be a little bit backwards. And then the other one will be up high, and it might face forward. And because the sound enters his ears at different angles, he can take that tiny little click that we heard and pinpoint exactly with his hearing right where the mouse is. He doesn't have to see the mouse to catch it. He can find it just by listening. And he'll lock onto that sound and follow it. Now, because he's traveling, even though he has excellent ears, he still needs to see where he's going. He's not a bat. He doesn't send out sounds and listen to the echoes coming back. So he needs to see where he's going. So, to help him see as he's traveling, following the sound of the mouse, he has a beautiful set of eyes. They're huge. His eyeballs, this is so cool, for seeing at night, take up about 1/3 of the space of his head. So if humans had eyes for night vision like an owl, you and I would have eyes maybe the size of a tennis ball, if not a grapefruit, in our head. It's a big old eye. And because his eyes are so big, and the way that they're constructed, he can take very tiny little bit of light and bounce it around in his eye and fire off all the cells in the back of his eyeball and help him see in very low light conditions. He needs very little light to see. Can't see in total darkness. He does need a little bit of light to be able to do that. And he needs a big eye to be able to do just that, to see at very low light conditions. Different books say different things, but they say he sees about 10 times better in the dark than you and I can. So if you and I were out and about, we would need 10 flashlights to see as well as he would see with one. That's a pretty amazing eye. And that is his tools for finding his food. He can listen and he can look to find his food. Now Guffy no longer can chase his food. That's why he stays with us. When Guffy was a youngster, he had an accident. He actually had 2 accidents. His first accident did not bring him to our center. His first accident was he broke his wing. So he came in as a youngster. We're not sure if maybe when he left the nest he fell, or maybe while he was in the nest an older brother or sister or mom or dad, somebody might have stepped on his wing by accident and broke it. We're not sure why Guffy broke his wing, but it indeed got broken and no human was there to help him. And the wing healed, but it healed the wrong shape. So Guffy cannot fly properly. And probably because he can't fly properly is the reason he had the second accident. One evening, some people were driving through a canyon up by Guffey, Colorado. And yep, that's where he got his name. And as they were driving through the highway, they heard a crunch on the side of their car. And they turned around to go back because they thought maybe a rock had fallen down from the side of the cliff. So they went back because they wanted to take a picture of the rock to show the insurance agent what hit the car. And as they were going back to the spot and where they expected to find a rock in the middle of the road, they found this beautiful great horned owl. He had flown into the side of their car and hit with the side of his face. And yeah, he was a mess when he came in. His little eye was all swollen up, his ear was bleeding. Oh, he was in so much pain and not very conscious. He was a pretty serious concussion. And as luck would have it for Guffy, the folks that picked him up, well, one of the folks in the car was actually a veterinarian. So yeah, he was a lucky little guy. So she actually took him right away to her clinic and she cared for him overnight, and then the next day they drove him down to our center for care. Now, most things have healed up. We're not 100% positive how well he hears on that side, and he does see fairly well. But what keeps him with us is, even though we tried our very best and our veterinarians worked on it as well, we tried to repair the wing, but the veterinarian said, you know, we could try and fix it, but we think we'll do him more harm than good. So we did some physical therapy and lots of exercise, and Guffy just never got back his ability to fly. So he will remain at our center. He's what we call a permanent resident, or a resident raptor, and he helps us very, very well with education. Now, great horns are, as I said, beautiful, and one of the things I always love to point out before I put Guffy away, I love to turn him around backwards. And I really like people to look at Guffy and see all his patterns and his colors. And if you use your imagination for just a second, what does Guffy sort of look like with his patterns and colors? He looks like tree bark, right? Yeah. So do you think he could hide in a tree really well? Any other places that he might be able to hide with patterns and colors like this? Yes, sir.
A log?
He could hide in some logs. Yeah. What do you think? Dirt? Yeah, he could hide on the ground, maybe in the brush and stuff, in the prairie. Absolutely. Where else? In some rocks. Yeah, we have a lot of rocks here, don't we? The bluffs and stuff along the river. Owls would love to hide there. And so during the day, his colors and patterns are really going to help him to be camouflaged. But at night, colors and patterns, they help a little bit. But what's really cool about night is shape and shadow. So as you can see right now, Guffy, if you look at him, what's the shape of his head? A circle. So if you were a mouse at night in the forest, and you looked up in a tree and you saw a circle shadow, what would you think? Owl. I better be careful, I'm going to be dinner, right? Exactly. So Guffy, to camouflage his shape, he has these very special feathers on his head. Let me lift them up for him. He has these special feathers, okay? Those are He'll probably put them back down, but that's okay. He can control his feathers. He can raise and lower them as he like. But did you notice as I lifted them up, did he lose the circle shape? Yeah. Now if you use your imagination, he just looks like part of the tree, doesn't he? He looks like he could be a log with some leaves or twigs sticking out of his head, right? And that's how he changes his shape. Isn't that cool? They are such amazing birds. Well, I'm going to put Guffy back because I got more birds to show you. You got time? Yep, hold on. Let me put Guffy back real quick. Oh, that's a very good question. Can you step in, Guffers? Thank you, Guffy. Guffy is 5 years old. And great horned owls actually have very long lives. They can live into their 30s in captivity. So in birds of prey, in captivity, they often live about twice as long as they might in the wild. That doesn't mean they couldn't live that long in the wild, but you know, as you get older, you start to have problems. Makes it harder. Yes?
What year was it Guffy got injured by the car?
Well, let's see. He's 5 years old this year, so that would be 2009. Did you hit him?
No.
Oh, okay.
Can they eat dog food or cat food?
You know, they cannot really digest food like that very well. It's not a very healthy diet for them, and it's not something that they would normally eat. Now, when they're starving and desperate, you know, I wouldn't put them past anything and injured, but for the most part, that is not a diet that they would do very well on. Yeah.
So do you let like a live rat
Guffy, Guffy has a handicap, so his food is already presented dead. So he gets a dead rat or a dead quail or a dead mouse or a chunk of rabbit or something like that for his meal every day. Yes, you had a question? Nope? Oh.
Oh, no.
Okay. Somebody else did.
Are owls good to see at dawning?
They can see in the daytime as well as at nighttime. And what's cool about Guffy is he's an owl that likes to hunt kind of at sunset and sunrise. So it's a big fancy word, crepuscular. He's a dawn and dusk kind of guy. And that's what's cool about owls. Different owls use different parts of the night. Yeah, because that's important because some owls like Guffy are really big. And if you're a little owl, which I'll show you in a minute, do you think you'd want to be out and about when he's out? No. Folks at the Fontanelle Forest Raptor Center, they did their very, very best to try to repair Oberon's wing. But unfortunately, despite their best efforts, Oberon lost his ability to fly. So he couldn't go back to the wild, but he needed a home. And at the time, we needed an owl. So luckily for us, Oberon was allowed to come and live with us. Birds of prey, as long with most birds in North America, are protected. So we have to have very special licensing to keep these birds to share with you. And so we did a lot of paperwork and Oberon came to live with us. Now, just like the great horned owl, you'll look very closely at Oberon's face. Can you see his facial discs? Yes, his are huge. He has these very big round ones for picking up the sounds of small animals in his habitat. And barred owls, like great horned owls, they actually eat a lot of different types of animals. Barred owls will eat rodents, they'll eat reptiles, so he'll eat snakes and lizards and mice and rats. And he likes to eat, this is so cool, frogs. And I have been told, I have a friend at a wildlife center in the east, and they have barred owls that live in the forest behind their raptor center, and they said their barred owls actually eat turtles. I know, so they have a crazy diet. They eat a lot of different types of animals, including birds. That's another thing on his list. And so just like the great horned owl, he's going to use a combination of his excellent nighttime vision and his amazing hearing to help him locate that animal. And once he's located the animal, he's got to use his next tool or adaptation, and that's for chasing. And of course, you all know what he's going to chase things with, right? Wings. Owls have powerful wings. They're very, very large, and they are built for incredible ability to be silent. When an owl is perfectly healthy and out and about doing his thing, when they fly, they don't make a sound. And what makes them so silent are their feathers. I like to think of their feathers as a muffling system. When you look at an owl, you notice they're just these big, fluffy creatures, right? And that's exactly what they are. They are so fluffy and soft. In fact, if I just ask Guffy or Oberon very politely, I'm just going to pull these feathers aside so you can see his legs. This is all fluff here. This is all fluff here. Yep, I gotcha. And even his head is much smaller than you think. Because if I pull these feathers up, look at that. That is all fluff. See, if I stick my finger in, boom. I go in that far before I hit his skull. In fact, if we plucked him, he's a rubber chicken under there. What happens is there's different edges on his feathers. Now, he's a little nervous, so I'm not going to ask him to hold out his wing. But if you were to be able to see him very close, if you were to look at the leading edge, so when he's flying, as his wings going into the wind, we call this his leading edge. And the feathers on the edge, if you were to be able to see them very close up, it looks like that he has a comb on the ends of his feathers. And that comb breaks up the air and helps to make it silence. Let's see, how can I know. How many of you guys like to go swimming? Who goes swimming? Great. Okay, when you go swimming, all right, imagine it's summer and it's 110 degrees and we're all in the swimming pool at the park. Okay, when you reach out to do your stroke and you reach forward, as you pull your arm back through the water, do you open your fingers or do you close them? You close them. Why do you close them?
So that the water doesn't go through your fingers as you swim.
Right, and that gives you power, right? That pulls you forward, okay? So when you do that, you create resistance to drive yourself forward. Well, the owl's wing does the same thing. As he's flapping through the air, he's making resistance, creating lift. But by putting those little combs on there, he actually decreases his resistance or breaks up the turbulence of the air, and that makes him silent. So as he pushes through the air, they open up. And try it, you know, pull your hand through the air. It's a little hard. If you open your fingers, it's a little bit easier. But my favorite thing to do is have you do a little experiment. You want to do it with me? All right, to do my experiment about feathers on owls, you need a hand attached to an arm. Okay, we all got that? Okay, so I want you to lift your arm straight up. Okay? Now, everyone wore deodorant today, right? Okay, now, I want you now to take your arm down to your side, palm up. Don't knock out anybody next to you. And then I want you to carefully fold your arm, fingertips to your ear, and just hold it there for a second. Now, your forearm is your wing, and your hand is your feather. Okay? First thing I want you to do is you're going to be a hawk. Hawks have a whole different wing. They're built for speed, like a swimmer. So when a hawk flies, his wing, his feather tips, his edges fit very tight together. So put your fingers really tight together, and the feathers are pretty stiff. So you want to try to keep your wrist, and I want you to put your hand right for your ear, and I want you to flap and listen. Okay, can you hear the air moving? Yeah? Now this is what I should be videographing. Okay, now, you're going to be an owl now. And owls have the comb-like structure on the leading edge, and they also have very fluffy edges on the side. So we want you to open up your fingers like an owl's feathers and do it again. Do you hear a difference? Isn't that crazy? It's all about the edges of the feathers. Isn't that awesome? And all that softness, especially on the edges of the feathers, those kind of fluffy fringed edges, that's his secret to flying silently. So that owl, he fixes on that animal with his ears or his eyes, and then he swoops in. I like to call owls stealth bombers because they're big. Well, if they're not big, some are small. But as they're coming in, they're like a little stealth bomber, and they're coming down, and the mouse probably doesn't even know the owl is there until the landing gear. The tools for catching come into play. So as that owl comes in, at the last second, the head kind of comes backwards, and the feet go right where the head was, which is in the perfect location for snagging the prey. And they're very good at it. They have these incredibly big feet. Sorry, Obi, I scared you a little bit. They have these very large toes. Oh, yep, he's it's okay. Yeah, he's a little nervous today. Little nervous, but he's all right. So they have these really big, powerful feet, long toes. Yeah, see? He's showing it. Yep. He's got these long toes. He's a little ticklish. I won't, yeah, he is. He's very sensitive feet. So he has these long toes, and his toes are quite amazing. They are incredibly powerful. Now, Oberon, if we were to put him on the scale right now, he weighs about 2 pounds. Wow. I know, he's all fluff. Yep. Yet, his toes, this is what really excites me. He weighs 2 pounds, but yet his toes, the way that they are constructed, he has over 100 pounds of squeezing power in his toes. So if you do the math, he has like 50 times the weight of his body in strength. So I want you to imagine for a moment your little hand. Imagine how much you weigh. Multiply that by 50. Put that strength in your hand. What could you do to your neighbor's head right now? Okay? Do we even come close to that with strength? Not at all. In fact, I had a wrist injury last year, and one of the ways they tested how I was healing is I had to squeeze this tool to see my grip. And at my best, my hand has 75 pounds of pressure per square inch. So his foot is stronger than my hand. And when he grabs prey, if he grabs something small enough, he could literally squeeze it to death. But more importantly, all that squeezing power, yep, I know, you're about done, is for driving those beautiful claws at the end of his toes. And you're all well aware of what they're called, right? Talons, yeah. He has these beautiful talons at the end of his toes. And when he grips down on something, where are those talons going? Right into his prey. And that's going to help him to give it a wound that's going to kill it very quickly. Because sadly, before he can eat the animal, he has to kill it. And once he's caught and killed his prey, he gets to eat it. And that's where that beak comes in. He has this beautiful, as all birds of prey do, they have this beautiful hook-shaped beak, and that beak helps them to tear their food into pieces that they can swallow. And when birds of prey eat animals, if the animal is small enough, they actually might eat the entire animal. So last night for dinner, Oberon got a rat. He got about a 6-week-old rat, which is about this long without its tail. He had that for dinner yesterday. And this morning when we were cleaning his enclosure, getting ready for the day, when I went in, I was looking around his cage, cleaning up, and the only part of that rat I found was the stomach, the intestines, and the tail. Everything else was eaten. He swallowed the head. He ate the fur. He swallowed bones, teeth, toenails, heart, liver, lungs. All of it went into his stomach. He has to do that. He has to eat the entire animal because animals are all he eats. He doesn't have salad for lunch. He doesn't get Fruit Loops for breakfast. He doesn't have ice cream for dessert. There are no broccoli stalks in his world. He has to get all the nutrition from for his body from the body of another animal. So you and I are a little bit different because we eat animals, but what else do we eat? Plants, fruits, and vegetables. So let me ask you this. If you guys wanted to eat something healthy for your eyeballs, what would you eat? A carrot. Now, does Oberon need to eat something healthy for his eyes? Yeah. Is he going to look for a carrot? No. What do you think he's going to eat to get healthy stuff for his eyeballs? Eyeballs, yeah. He eats somebody else's eyeballs. Yeah. What do you guys eat or drink to get good stuff for your bones? Milk, yeah. Does he do dairy? No. Well, he could do blood, but there's something better than blood to get calcium. Bones, you're catching on. To get good stuff for his muscles? Muscles. To get good stuff for his skin, what's he going to eat? Skin. To get good stuff for his heart. Heart. To get good stuff for his brain. Brains. Yeah. He eats the whole thing. Now, just like you and I, he eats. He tears the animal into pieces. Or in some cases, if it's small enough, he might just swallow the whole mouse. He can do that. Yep, and just like you and I, the food goes down the tube, the esophagus, into his stomach. And just like in your stomach, it's like a little chemical factory in there, right? The stomach releases chemicals to break down the food, turns it into kind of this mush, and you digest it. And then it passes from your stomach into your intestines, on and on. And you've probably noticed, when you're all done eating, a few hours later, you have some things you couldn't use, right? We all make waste. He does too. And in fact, I'm surprised he hasn't done it today because he's a little nervous. But some of the things that he eats, he can't digest, just like you can't digest everything. But some of those things are really big. Like if Oberon, we fed Oberon a mouse and he swallowed the whole mouse, he would have the whole skull of the mouse in his stomach. And he can't digest that skull completely. He can't break those bones down. Do you think it's going to be very safe for that skull to be pushed through his body the rest of the way? No. It's actually too big to even leave his stomach. So after the stomach's done with its chemical digestion and all the smaller things are pushed out, the stomach, if you will, use an imagination a little bit, it's sort of like a trash compactor. And it squeezes all the things he couldn't digest that were big, like bones, fur, teeth, toenails, feathers, claws, things like that, squeezes it in this really tight ball. And once that ball is formed, we give it a name. Do you, oh, I bet you know. A pellet, very good. We call them pellets. And once a pellet's formed, he has to get rid of it. Well, it can't go through his body, so guess what? It's coming out the way it went in. He's going to regurgitate it. Or, there's a very lovely way to say it. The owl casts his pellet. See, that's so much nicer than he throws it up, okay? So the owl will cast his pellet. And when the pellets come out, they're a little slimy, I will admit, but they're very tightly packed. And if you let them dry out, they are amazing little mystery packages, especially if you find pellets from the owl or the hawk in your neighborhood. And you can learn what they're eating by looking inside their pellets. And actually tomorrow, if you want to try that, if you're able to come to the Owl Festival in the morning at the Nature Center from 10 to about 11:30, 12, we will be taking apart pellets at 11:30 at the Nature Center. So if you've never taken an owl pellet apart, here's your big chance tomorrow at the Owl Festival at the Nature Center. So come on out to do that. And it's a great tool for all of them. Okay, so all birds of prey actually make pellets. Owls make the best. They make the coolest because they have actually weaker stomach acids. They can't break down bone very well. So if we fed Oberon a mouse tomorrow when he cast his pellet, we could pull it apart and almost every single bone from the mouse would be in his pellet. I mean, even the rib cage. Have you ever seen a rib cage on a mouse? It's not very big. It's very thin, but he can't break it down. Isn't that awesome? All right, I got one more bird to show you. Okay, you got enough patience? I know I'm going on and on, but I got one more to show you. And Oberon, he's like, please, please, please. Oh yeah. Yeah, he's a little nervous today. He'll be okay. All right, I saved the cutest for last. She's adorable. Hi, Elsa. Oh, come here, Elsa. Step. Okay, come here. Oh, you're okay. Yeah. There we go. Now, owls come in a huge variety of sizes. Some of them are very big, like the great horned owl and the barred owl, but some of them are incredibly small. And this is not the smallest. No way. There are several owls even smaller than this. This beautiful little owl is called the screech owl. And we have, in Colorado, we get not too often, but this is the eastern screech owl, but more commonly in Colorado, we get the western screech owl. But they're very, very similar. They're a lovely little owl. And you know what, I'm just going to turn, we've named this little owl Elsa, by the way. I'm going to turn Elsa around, and I want you to look at her colors and patterns. And where do you think she would live based on her colors and patterns? What do you think? Yes, sir?
In a tree.
In a tree. What were you going to say? In a tree? In where?
Dirt?
She might, yeah, but in a tree. She looks, if you use your imagination, she looks a lot like tree bark. In fact, at the center, at the Raptor Center, someone took a picture one day. They had Elsa out for a program, and they put Elsa up against the bark of a cottonwood tree, and she closed her eyes. And when you first look at the picture, you don't even see her. And then the next picture, she'd opened her eyes, and they took a picture, and then you saw her. She blended perfectly with the bark of the cottonwood tree. It's amazing. And just like the great horned owl, did you notice what she's got on her head? She has her beautiful little ear tufts for camouflage to help her blend into the tree for more protection. She is an amazing little owl. Now, Elsa came to us from western Nebraska. Elsa was unfortunately flying across the highway one evening, and she flew into the antenna on a car. Yeah, and she hit pretty hard. And unfortunately for Elsa, she shattered her wing. She broke her little wing in about 4 different places. And she went to a different facility. She went to the local wildlife center near her. And the staff and the volunteers and the veterinarians that all helped the birds there, again, they tried their very best to repair Elsa's wing, but unfortunately it didn't work, and Elsa was left non-flighted. And again, she needed a home, and we were very happy to give her one at our center. Now, little owls like Elsa, they live in the forest, and because they're so small, they take advantage of nesting in cavities. This is a cavity nesting bird. Do you all know what that means to be a cavity nester? It means you look for a hole in something. So a screech owl might look for a hole in a tree. Maybe a branch breaks off and there's a hollow in the tree that they could get into. But they've also adapted to living near humans. And a lot of screech owls come to us from right inside the city of Pueblo. They'll use the big old elm trees and cottonwood trees, cavities that might nest in them. But you know where else sometimes we find them? In people's houses. Maybe there's a little hole in the roof. They need a hole about this big around to get inside of. Sometimes there's a hole maybe under the eaves of the house or in the shed, and they can get up in there and they'll nest in the attic of the house or up in the shed. So sometimes people will find a nest of screech owls in their house, or in an old brick building, a brick falls out and there's a hollow that they can get into. So a lot of screech owls actually live in the city with us. And it's actually not a bad place, because if you think about it, if you look at Pueblo, is Pueblo sort of like a forest? Do we have a lot of trees? Yeah. And would there be food for a screech owl? Now, she's pretty small. What do you think she might eat? Mice? Yeah, I heard mice. Yes?
Worms.
Worms? You know, birds of prey are not big on eating worms. They'd rather eat the birds that catch the worms. Catching worms is specialized work, and things like robins and some of the songbirds are much better at it than a bird of prey. So Elsa might eat the robin that ate the worms. They're not a big fan of worms, but that's a very good guess anyway. What do you think? Mice, definitely mice. What else?
Bugs.
Bugs, very good. She will eat insects, absolutely. What else?
Mice eat mouse.
Mice, yeah. So she'd eat mice. She might eat a lizard. She might eat a cricket or a grasshopper. She might eat a small bird. Are these things you could find in your backyard? Yeah. If you had big tall trees, is it possible you have a screech owl living there? Maybe. There's a good way to know. If you're ever out in your backyard and you start finding little mice without heads on them, because you know what? Just like us, they eat their favorite part first. Yes, I had some people that called me up and they said one day, we are finding all these headless mice in our backyard. And I was curious, so I wandered. I kind of knew what it was, but I was curious. And we went out, and sure enough, we scanned the tree and we found the nesting cavity with the screech owls. There were so many mice in the neighborhood. They were very well fed and ate only their favorite parts. They are so cool. So little Elsa is just as equipped as those big owls to help her do her prey. Can you see all those things that make her an owl? She has those beautiful facial discs around her eyes, big eyes for night vision, yep. Incredible hearing for finding her food. Just like the bigger owls, she's very soft and fluffy. She has large wings with those soft, frayed, fringed edges for silence. And I don't know if you can see on my glove, but did you check out the size of her feet? For such a little bird, she has incredible power in her toes and her talons for catching her prey. And then just like the bigger guys, there's that specialized hook-shaped beak for tearing the food into pieces that she can swallow. So she is just as well adapted as any of her big relatives. Now, owls are all around us. They live, like I said, they can live in the city with us. They can live in the country. They can haunt our houses. They're very amazing birds. They help so much. We think about always, how do the animals help us? That's one of the things we always ask ourselves. Well, why should I protect that animal? How does it help me? And sometimes I get frustrated with that, but I understand that. This little owl eats mice. Mice are incredible animals on their own, and they are very capable of populating the earth very rapidly. One of the things we do is we have to feed Elsa mice. So guess what we have at our center? A mouse house. And yeah, you put a male and a female mouse in a house together, and you give them plenty of food and water and shelter, and you have a lot of mice in a very short time. A pair of mice, the female, she gets pregnant to have her babies. Did you know that mice can have, on average, they have 8 pups a month? And they can have anywhere from 8 to up to 15 babies at one time. Yeah. And as soon as mom gives birth, if any of you are mothers out there, you're going to appreciate this. As soon as she gives birth, very shortly after she gives birth, she can get pregnant right away. So she's nursing one litter while she's pregnant with the next. So mice can literally give birth every 3 weeks. And their babies grow up very quickly. And by the time they're 3 months old, guess what? They can get married and start having children too. So imagine if we closed off this room, left 2 mice in here, plenty of food and water, and we went away for 1 year. And we came back the next year and opened the door. What would we be greeted with? A flood of mice. Yeah. So this little screech owl eats a mouse or 2 a night. So you have to really look at predators like snakes and mice and hawks and eagles and falcons, all those predators. They have such a critical job helping us balance the environment. They're so important. And they also can tell us when things are wrong. Sometimes birds of prey are the first ones to tell us there's a disease or something wrong because they're at the top of the food chain. Boom. They tell us very quickly when the food below them is vanishing. So very, very important animals. Well, all the owls that you've met tonight are residents at the Nature and Raptor Center, and we are so excited to have our first Colorado Owl Festival here in Pueblo. So thank you guys all for coming. I hope we'll see you at the rest of the festival. I'm going to hang around. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks so much.